Hi, this is Chris Campbell, and welcome to the Food Institute podcast. This week, we are happy to welcome Hugh Welsh, General Counsel, Secretary, and President at DSM North America. And in the spirit of Thanksgiving and the winter holidays, we'll be taking a look at some of the philanthropic work DSM has done across the globe. But first, whether you are a first-time listener or becoming something of a regular, we ask that you share this episode on your social media platforms. It really helps us expand our reach, and we appreciate it when you do so. And I should also note that we're available on Spotify and Apple iTunes now, so take a look for us there too if those are your platforms of choice, and subscribe. So with that all said, I'll introduce Hugh and start off by asking him how he's doing today. So how are you, Hugh?
I'm doing fantastic, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's definitely that season of giving. And as I teased at the beginning, we're definitely going to talk a little bit about those philanthropic efforts. But before we really get too far into that topic, I'd like you to kind of share a little background on yourself and also DSM for those who may not be familiar.
Sure. I'll start with DSM. The acronym DSM actually stands for Dutch State Mines. And we started as a coal mining company in the Netherlands 116 years ago. And over the course of the succeeding decades, we've evolved first into manufacturing industrial chemicals, then to manufacturing maybe some more complex chemicals, to the company we are today, which has nothing to do with coal mining, nothing to do with industrial chemicals today. We're primarily a nutrition company. So we make all of the letter vitamins you might be familiar with, vitamin C, D, E, A, carotenoids, which are colorants, things like beta carotene, astaxanthin, zeaxanthin, lipids like omega-3. And that's a very, very big part of our business, both in human nutrition, where it goes into food, beverage, and dietary supplements, as well as animal nutrition, where you would find that in feed for your dog, your cat, but also for cattle, for pigs, for chickens. Other parts of our business include fibers, fiber called Dyneema, which is used in life protection equipment like ballistic vests for our law enforcement and militaries, biomedical materials, engineering materials that go into cars and electronics. It's, as you can see, it's a pretty diversified company. But as I think we'll get into in a little bit, we've like to think we've repurposed that acronym because it really doesn't stand for Dutch State Mines anymore. Today, we like to think it's about how we do something meaningful and try to find a way for our employees to do something meaningful every day.
So I definitely like a good pivot and a good story like that. A company that's been around for over 100 years. I'm assuming you haven't been around for 100 years, Hugh. So maybe you could give a little background on your professional experience and how you ended up with DSM.
Although sometimes it does feel like 100 years, other days it seems like I just got here. But I've been with DSM now for 17 years. I came to DSM in 2004, very soon after DSM acquired Hoffman LaRoche's vitamins business. And that business was in the United States, headquartered here in New Jersey, and that's where I work out of. We have our North American headquarters in Parsippany, New Jersey. Before that, I worked for another company I think a lot of people are familiar with called American Standard. You use their products every day as well. And just prior to that, I was a lawyer at a big New Jersey law firm called McCarter and English. But it's always been my passion, my vocation to work in a business that makes something. I think a lot of people feel that same sentiment, but also work in a business that makes something that matters. And so I've had a wonderful career so far. I hope I get to work for another 50 years here at DSM. But if it all ended tomorrow, I could look back and say it's been a remarkable ride and a great privilege, and probably would have done it for free.
Something that I teased in the intro and something I really enjoyed when our pre-calls, when you said, DSM really stands for do something meaningful. And it's the week after Thanksgiving. We have the winter holidays approaching. And with COVID-19, I think there's an increased focus on, people that are suffering across the globe and even in our own neighborhoods. So in the spirit of that giving, I was wondering if you could give us a brief overview of DSM's mission to fight food insecurity across the globe.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. We are the world's largest nutrition company, and with that size and with the privilege that comes with that, there's also a responsibility to ensure that you do everything you can to get the products that you make to the people who need them to reach their full potential. And I think a lot of folks are familiar with hunger in the idea of not getting enough calories. We have an epidemic of hunger here in the United States at the moment as a consequence of COVID-19 and folks losing their jobs. And DSM, like many other companies, is stepping up and trying to ensure that our local food banks have what they need to meet that demand. I think we all recognize hunger in terms of a lack of calories. when we've seen issues in sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia of starvation. But there's another hunger that's even more profound in some respects, and we like to refer to that as hidden hunger or a silent tsunami, and it's the 2 billion people on the planet that don't get the micronutrients they need to reach their full potential. To see how that bears out, we look at children, and 43% of children who die under the age of 5 every year die because of a nutrition issue. Hundreds of millions of children every year that have no chance to reach their full physical or cognitive potential because of micronutrient issues. And so we at DSM are always looking for new and innovative ways to get these really empowering essential nutrients that we make to all of those people that need them. And maybe we'll have the opportunity to walk through a little bit some of the different programs that we use and different pathways that we use to ensure that can happen.
So I heard you mention that you're active in sub-Saharan Africa and also in Asia. Can you give a better idea of where you're operating currently, what kind of programs you have in those areas, and then maybe even do a specific area in more detail to give people an idea of what it's like to be with DSM with boots on the ground there?
Absolutely. I mean, DSM itself operates in 60 countries around the world on 6 continents, so we're pretty geographically spread out. In Africa, we work through a number of different programs to get the products that we make to the people that need them in real time. I mean, we started with the United Nations World Food Program. The United Nations World Food Program just won the Nobel Prize for the work that it's done to get emergency food relief to the people that desperately need it in places like Yemen at the moment. But we've worked with the United Nations World Food Program in partnership since 2007, and they came to us initially saying, DSM, we're really good at getting enough calories in a cup to feed a child in a school feeding program, but we're not so good at ensuring that the product that we put in that cup has all of the nutrients necessary so that child can grow as that child should grow, and that child can develop their brain like that child should develop their brain. So we help them with that, with our hundreds of nutritional scientists that we have within the company, and invented a couple of new things. Like one at the time was called a Mix Me sachet, which is a small sachet that contains all of the essential nutrients that a child would need to reach its full potential. Think of it in U.S. terms as like the recommended daily allowance. And it's a point of use product where you can just rip it open, sprinkle it on the food in that World Food Program red school feeding cup, and that child will get the nutrition it needs. And through that program in Africa, we've reached 39 million children. And what we learned from that, though, it wasn't enough. We needed to learn a way to do more. And one of the areas that I'm most proud of personally, because I got to use my modest legal skills, was building a new business in Africa called Africa Improved Foods. And what we decided to do at the invitation of President Kagame in Rwanda was build a plant in Kigali that makes a nutritious porridge. And that porridge has all the nutrients necessary for a child, again, to reach their full potential. And we've already reached 1.5 million children in Rwanda. We've reduced the stunting rate in the country of Rwanda by 6% already. 2 years we've been in operation. So it's already had a profound effect on that community. But what I take most pride in with this particular project is that it enables the local economy as well. And so this is a for-profit venture. The profits aren't large. They're nowhere near the return on capital employed that we would get in a similar operation in the United States or in Western Europe. But we get to employ 400 people in Kigali that are working in our manufacturing plant. We source all of our raw materials from 900 different Rwandan smallholder farmers. And those farmers, for the first time, have an opportunity to borrow against our contracts and improve their productivity.
So hearing that, it kind of reminds me of that old adage, you can give a man a fish or teach him how to fish. And I think it's very interesting to hear, it's not just a philanthropic effort, it's also a business effort, but it's really more of a self-sustaining kind of model that you're trying to create. And is this something that you employ across the globe, or is this more of a test pilot kind of project right now in Rwanda?
It started as a test pilot project. We had a difficult time finding partners to do this with us. But we did find some excellent partners in the International Finance Corporation. It's part of the World Bank, the CDC in the UK, FMO in the Netherlands. We're already working to sort of scale it up and replicate it in other countries. We're looking at places like Kenya and Ethiopia, but candidly, it could be done anywhere in the world. And for us, it was a tremendous learning experience because historically, organizations, very, very well-meaning organizations like USAID in the United States, would buy up surplus crops from Iowa or wheat from Western Europe and deliver that as food relief into places like Rwanda. And they would distribute that through local non-government organizations, some of which would be made into food and used to meet the needs of starving people. But a good deal of it would be sold on the open market to raise cash. And that would have, I think, the unintended consequence of disrupting local agricultural markets so that most farming was left to be subsistence farming. And we know that if we want to grow economies, and growing economies are what raise people out of poverty, we need to move away from strictly subsistence farming to more commercial farming. And so building food manufacturing plants like this that rely on locally sourced, in this case, maize and soy, raise all boats, those that can work in the facilities, those that provide products to the facilities, and of course the beneficiaries and the consumers of the product in the market.
So the COVID-19 pandemic is certainly changing things, across the globe, and has been for most of 2020. I was wondering, how has it affected DSM's efforts for fighting food insecurity across the globe?
It certainly has created greater awareness around the products and services that we provide. Essential nutrition is just that. It's essential. If you're not getting appropriate nutrition, regardless as to whether or not you're getting sufficient calories, if you're not getting appropriate nutrition, your immunity level will be reduced, and your susceptibility to infection and disease like COVID, but also the ordinary cold and flu, will go up. And that's what we see. If we look at a lot of the emerging data right now, particularly around vitamin D, we see that folks with very low levels of vitamin D seem to have greater susceptibility to COVID-19 and also poor outcomes with respect to COVID-19. So what we initially did as a company is we developed a proprietary blend of vitamins, which would include D, but also A, zinc, selenium, C, and provided that to all of our employees. And so we distributed products to all of our employees, particularly those working in plants. We got them all of the essential nutrition that they needed to allow their bodies to do the best job they could and improve their own immunity. We're also working very hard now on getting a form of vitamin D to the market we call Ampli-D. Its scientific name would be 25-hydroxy-D3 or calcifediol. And it's what happens, it's what's circulating in your bloodstream today as vitamin D. If you go to the doctor today and you get a vitamin D blood test, they're checking the 25-hydroxy vitamin D3 levels, and we have a product that can help raise that extremely quickly, and we think that could be a big benefit in improving the immunity, particularly of the elderly, people of color, those who historically have very low vitamin D levels. We can get those vitamin D levels up very quickly. So there's a lot that we've learned as a consequence of the COVID-19. I think we've all learned a lot about ourselves and the resilience of us individually, our businesses, and our community. But we've also learned a lot about nutrition in this context. And it's something that we'll take forward to help insulate the population against whatever the next pandemic might bring.
So when it comes to COVID-19, what about supply chain and logistics? Are you finding any difficulty in sourcing ingredients, and how does that affect, your efforts in sub-Saharan Africa and across the globe in fighting food insecurity? Are you seeing a major impact because of, the tie-ups due to COVID-19 on the shipping lanes?
We did in the very early days. It was very difficult because of very aggressive government action around the world in all geographies to move goods and services through international supply chains. And so in the early days, we were very hamstrung in our capacity to get the products that we needed to the places that they needed to be on time. I think a lot of that has been resolved. Remarkably, and some might say ironically, in places like Africa, we haven't seen the impact of COVID-19 as severe as we have in some of the Western economies, in Western Europe and the United States particularly. And so our operations in those countries throughout Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America, more than Latin and South America, have not been adversely impacted yet by COVID-19. We have seen, though, through a lot of the NGOs we work, a real need to do much more intervention here in the United States than they had before. And so a lot of the groups that we've worked with, like Vitamin Angels, have moved to pivot quickly to meet the growing need for food and nutrition here in the United States, where in the past most of their efforts were focused on places like Sub-Saharan Africa, India, and then Southeast Asia.
In conversations we had before this call, Hugh, you mentioned that philanthropic efforts were great, but often not enough. And I was just wondering if you can give us a description of DSM's overall approach to fighting food insecurity.
Yeah, I mean, we have a foundation in DSM that certainly makes philanthropic donations, but we always look to try to find a way to leverage that cash contribution with an in-kind contribution from DSM around the know-how that we bring with respect to nutrition. And that could be essential nutrition for humans. It could be around animal nutrition to increase the output of eggs, cheese, I can go on. And so we always try to tie those two things together because we find that you get better outcomes when you bring not just material, not just cash, but also know-how. And there's a lot of different ways that we do that. One that's very exciting to me is an organization that we helped found called Partners in Food Solutions. And Partners in Food Solutions is a consortium of companies that include DSM, Hershey's, Cargill, General Mills, and Ardent Mills. And what these companies do is they've built out a platform that has folks working in Africa across about 12 different African countries for 600 different African food manufacturers. And the goal is to improve the operations of these African food manufacturers with respect to efficiency or safety or quality, such that they can be serving their own local markets and also serving the aid agencies like the World Food Programs of the USAID. And the means by which we help improve these 600 different African food manufacturers, I think, is pretty unique. What we do is we rely on the volunteer efforts of our own employees. And so we're not asking employees, again, for money or material. We're asking them to share their know-how. And so we'll stand up a project around, a miller in Kenya that needs specialized help with an autoclave and some engineering. And then we'll look at the different companies' employee base and say, do we have expertise in this area where an employee is willing to volunteer to share that expertise via Skype, via Zoom, with that African food manufacturer? And we found it to be a really remarkable way to share Western know-how, big company, multinational know-how, with small African food manufacturers who could never afford to go out to the market and buy this themselves, to help those African food manufacturers, again, produce at a much higher efficiency level to help their own communities. And our employees get the sense that, they do something meaningful, that they can go home at night and talk to their families about how they had a conversation with a miller in Kenya, and they help that miller improve its efficiency such that it could feed 1,000 more people in that community. I'd love to see this kind of model that is private partnership to help raise the standard of living, raise the quality of product, improve the economic development of people, places, countries all over the world.
So you had an illustrious list there of partners that you work with. And I'm wondering, are there other companies out there doing this? And is there really a need for it? Or is this something that the food industry overall is kind of tackling together?
Yeah, there's certainly a need for it. There's a growing need for it. I'm pretty proud of the way the food industry has stepped up when called upon to help not just meet the hunger crisis here in the United States, but around the world. We're part of an organization called Scaling Up Nutrition. It's got 186 company members and is working together with organizations like, again, the World Food Program and UNICEF and World Vision to ensure that the food that we produce and distribute around the world has the nutrition that it requires. I mentioned that illustrious group of really great American companies that are working together in Partners in Food Solutions. There are many others that are working in parts of Africa to do the same. But I really, at this point, don't think it's enough. I mean, if I had to ring the bell for a call to action, it would be asking a lot of the companies that operate in the food industry to step up and deploy some capital in these places to help us work together with us to build out the next generation of African improved foods in places like Ethiopia and Sudan, in Kenya and Malawi, to work on the next generation of Partners in Food Solutions as maybe a Partners in Feed Solutions to help with the promotion and development of animal agriculture in these places as well. So, I'm proud of the efforts that the food industry has undertaken already, but I think that the demand is currently exceeding the supply, and I would love for them to reach out to a company like DSM and let's find a way to work together in a pre-competitive sense to help improve lives all over the world.
So, if you were talking to one of those companies right now, what would you say are some of the major benefits that you've seen at DSM for engaging in these types of philanthropic efforts? And it could be anything from, like you're saying, that your employees are feeling the pride of actually helping out, to maybe even a business boost and the good PR. What kind of benefits would a company that joins a philanthropic effort like this expect to see?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in the food industry or the food and beverage industry, you probably don't know DSM. But I promise you that if you asked any one of my 23,000 colleagues in the company, they would tell you that they've never felt more engaged working for an organization in their life. That they're incredibly proud of the work that the company does, not just to meet the needs of our customers and our shareholders, but to meet the needs of the communities within which we all live and work, but also society at large. And that the work we do to literally touch the lives of hundreds of millions of people who, without our essential nutrients, will never, ever reach their full potential is incredibly moving, incredibly powerful. And we try to share those stories and bring those employees along to see this firsthand every chance we get. Again, building out organizations like Partners in Food Solutions and giving each employee, you could work in marketing or finance or HR, work in engineering, you could have the chance to volunteer your know-how and work in one of these organizations is an incredibly powerful experience. And there is a certain subset of employees that we take with us to visit Kigali, Rwanda, or go on a World Food Program mission to Bangladesh, or visit a Vitamin Angels initiative in India. It's an incredibly engaging narrative for the company, and it's really firmly embedded in our DNA and our culture. But it's not just about employee engagement and recruitment and retention. For us, this is really also, there's some knock-on business benefit. We're learning a lot about doing business in places like sub-Saharan Africa, in East Africa, in Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Sudan, in Kenya, learning how to do business in places like Indonesia and Cambodia, places where we ordinarily would not be doing business because of, frankly, better areas to deploy capital. But we learn a lot about the culture and the people and the opportunities there through ventures like Africa Improved Foods and Partners in Food Solutions. I think it's that know-how is going to really springboard DSM into the next iteration of its growth, where places like Africa, where there will be a tremendous population growth over the next couple of decades, will be the next area for the global multinationals, particularly in the food and beverage space, to grow. And I like to think that we have been there for quite a while, relationships with local governments, local NGOs, and those things will pay dividends for us on the business side down the road. But the business purpose isn't the only purpose that we do these things. We do it because it's the right thing to do. And again, if you're a company of our size that sells the products that we sell, you have a responsibility to do these things as well.
I think that's very well said. With 2021 around the corner, it's usually a time for New Year's resolutions. And I'm wondering, what does DSM have planned for 2021 on these philanthropic fronts?
We'll continue to look to expand our Africa Improved Foods venture. It will be going into year 3 of our Kigali operations. We've learned a lot. We're profitable there now, and I think that we've demonstrated to the world that this model makes sense, not just from a business perspective, but from a beneficiary perspective, from a government perspective, from an economic growth perspective. So I think we'll see a lot more of that. Our business continues to do pretty well. The pandemic has made people, I think, very aware of their own health and the need to ensure that they get the essential nutrition they require to stay healthy. I think we'll see more of that in 2021. We'll see a bigger focus on areas like personalized nutrition, where we can help consumers better understand what specific nutrients they need to be who they are and reach their full potential, and bring that to places like Africa, like Central America, like Southeast Asia. We've worked over the years with an organization also called Global Health Corps. It was an organization formed by President Bush's daughter, Barbara, that does remarkable work. It has a fellowship model where it recruits some of the best to come and work in NGOs in different parts of the world. And we've worked very closely with them on health and nutrition issues in everywhere from Newark, New Jersey to Nairobi, Kenya. And I think that we'll work with Global Health Corps to build out that fellowship model a bit more. I'd encourage folks to go take a look. I know that they're recruiting fellows right now. I will tell you, though, it's harder to get a fellowship in Global Health Corps than it is to get into Harvard Business School. And that just speaks to the quality of the people that they have the capacity to recruit and retain. And the alumni network of that organization is literally now a who's who of thought leaders, political leaders, academic leaders in the health and nutrition space around the world. So I think, like many, we'd be happy to see 2020 come to an end. I'm very excited for what 2021 might bring for our company, for our customers, for our shareholders and employees, but also for, I think, the great and meaningful work that we are privileged to have the opportunity to do around the world.
So I think that about wraps it up for us this week on the Food Institute podcast. Hugh, where can our listeners go to learn more about DSM and these efforts?
You can go take a look at www.dsm.com, at DSM on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter as well, at Hugh Welsh, and I hope you do. And you can follow along on the meaningful work that we do every day, and hopefully join us on our journey to do something meaningful.
We really appreciate you taking the time today, Hugh. We'll also definitely share all of the links in the description of this episode so that you can follow along with the efforts DSM is making. So remember, if you're new to the Food Institute podcast, please follow, like, and share. If you'd like to learn more about the Food Institute, please take a look at the links in our description to learn more about us and what membership could do for you and your company. So until next time, this is Chris Campbell signing off.